And we are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Embroidery Nerd Digitizing 911, where we are going to go through a file, pick it apart, and explore what could be better. And we've got a user submission that was given to Mr. Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios over there.
Hello.
He's going to be vocal and not make Jeff talk all the time.
Yes. So yeah, this actually came through with somebody on the Discord.
I think I saw that post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone posted saying that anybody that knows anything about 3D, can you take a look at the file? So yeah, I said email it over. I'll take a look, and kind of looked at it like, there were some decisions that were made on this. So, and again, I don't know where it originated from. I don't want to put anybody down. I don't know if this is just someone that's new to the game and a novice at digitizing, and this is their first stab at it, or if they got it from a digitizer. If they got it from an experienced digitizer, they may want to look for another one. Just saying, because there's some odd stuff in this design. I mean, I've seen things here and there that's like, oh, I would have done it a little bit different, but I was kind of scratching my head on a few things on this design.
There were a couple of things that I looked at, and I'm like, that's a really weird thing to do and not do everywhere else.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, while Justin, you get ready to share all your magical screen and everything, I'm going to grab some comments here. We have Cindy King joining us from Odessa, Texas. If you guys haven't noticed, Cindy King has been posting some really cool tips and tricks in the Embroidery Nerd group lately.
Yep.
Definitely worth stopping in, taking a look, and seeing what she's up to. We have Mr. Doug Sobel joining us from Los Angeles. I believe we're going to meet Doug. I'm hoping you're going to the Impressions Expo this year. Planning on seeing you there. Both Justin will be there as well as myself. And for anybody that's curious, Justin does have a couple of classes up on the Impressions Expo. There's a couple with the embroidery toolkit, and then there's one on, I believe it was 3D Puff, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna revisit my 3D Puff class. Kind of some of the stuff that I've done before, but I'm gonna update some information and do some fun projects that I have in mind for it. So yeah, check them out. If you've already registered for the show, go back and register for those classes if you're interested in taking those.
Absolutely. And we have Barb joining us from North Central Minnesota. Welcome. Minnesota is cold. Actually, I feel like North Central, I should meet Barb. If I haven't yet, I should, because I'm pretty close to Minnesota.
Are you?
Yeah, I go up there. That's where I do the event at SPSI. They're up in Minnesota. So
That's right.
Let's see. There's my horrible spelling because apparently I can't spell watching. And we have Jesse Gibson joining us as well. Hello.
Hello, Jesse.
And there's some chatter going back and forth in. Ooh, I missed Mr. Frank Dunn.
Our friend from the other side of the pond.
Absolutely. Welcome, Frank. I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. And I think that I've caught everybody. Hopefully I have. Perfect. There's some chatter going back and forth, which is awesome. If you guys do have any questions during this whole presentation, feel free to throw popcorn at Justin, and I will stop him, and we will make some comments to that. But
shout it out.
With that, I'll go ahead and we'll do, I think it's this one that's the nice one, except, yeah, Justin's screen needs to be big. Not my face.
All right. Well, just like I always do when I get a file and someone, says, hey, can you take a look at this? Or if there's something specific that they're having problems with. This individual didn't say anything specific as far as issues they were having. But again, just kind of taking a look at the file. I always do a slow redraw at first just to kind of see how the file is sewing. So as of in the beginning, what I thought was a tack down stitch for the foam, but then kind of watching this sew through, it goes through each letter. At least they started center out, but they went back and did another tack down stitch. So
I'd assume that it was a placement.
Yes. So that's after seeing that, that's where I kind of gathered it was a placement stitch. Typically, I would never waste the stitches on a placement stitch. You pretty much can, If you have a printout of the design, you can cut your foam out to the size that you need or a little bit bigger that you need. Um, I just think it's a waste. Not to mention, if I look at the stitch lengths on not only the placement stitch or the placement and the tack down, placement stitch. I mean, it's minimal. What are you saving? About 500 stitches there. Removing that, again, I just, it's kind of a waste of time for that, in my opinion. Knowing that you're going to trace your design, you're going to know your placement, and you can pretty much put the foam, as long as you're cutting the foam a little bit bigger than the design, you shouldn't have any problems with it coverage. Um, I do know some people like using a tack down stitch. Um, my kind of theory for that is, when it comes to 3D puff, you want to use as the least amount of stitches as possible, so you're not hammering that foam with the pressure foot of your machine more than you have to. If you use the technique, I don't know if everybody's seen the videos that we've done before, but we use a rubber band where the crown meets the bill. And if you get the foam underneath that rubber band, if it's a nice size rubber band, it'll hold the foam in place, so you don't really need a tack down stitch. So I prefer it, not usually using a tack down stitch, but I know some people do like that. I think the amount of stitches is a little overkill, the amount that they place there. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete all the tack downs that they have.
I know when I do it, it's like a really long. I'll do like a 4 millimeter stitch length, and I'm going as I'll go a couple of inches and just make sure that I got some solid lock stitches on there. I don't really want to nail down that much foam. The quality of foam in embroidery has gone up, but there's still a lot. There's still a lot of variance in there, and you never know whether or not you're going to get a good quality foam when you make a file, or you're going to get an average quality or a below average quality that's just going to flatten with just your placement stitch.
Exactly. So yeah, minimum amount of stitches as possible when it comes to 3D puff. You're getting just enough that it's going to cut the foam and get good coverage, and don't do any more pressure on that foam that you have to. So I went ahead and removed all the tack down and whatnot. I'll go ahead and at the end, I'll do a couple of tack down stitches. You don't need to run through each letter so many times like it had. You're basically just using it to tack down the foam. So I might just do one that's come from the center here up, so it can tack down this area. Maybe one down the center of the F and one down the center of the W, and that's just tacking it in place. So that'll be sufficient. So just in case the end user does prefer using the tack down stitches. Other than that, let's go through the sew sequence. So they started with the crossbar of the H. It does walk down to the bottom there.
I did find that interesting that they started with the crossbar.
They started with a crossbar, and only that, now the pathing that they're taking with just doing the vertical on the H, they're going to have to do the top horizontal and trim and go back to the bottom horizontal, and then another trim,
2 trims.
and then another trim.
Yeah.
So they are kind of treating these where there's no reason why this H can't be sewn with that needle down and no trims at all. And it's kind of the same throughout.
The other thing I'm going to point out there too is those insides of those caps are not feathered on any of them.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So what Jeff is referring to is there. See that cap there? They have a straight edge. So what that's going to happen is that you're going to actually cut the foam inside underneath that top satin. So anytime you're completely perforating that foam, it gives it another edge that wants to pop off that hat and start putting pressure on that top thread. So again, this is kind of going through, just doing the verticals and then coming back and do the horizontals. And again, with the same, kind of doing all the serifs last. So that's putting quite a bit of trims in there that are unnecessary, which is going to slow down your production time. not very efficient, to say the least. So, uh,
Now, and there's also no bridges. So when the letters come across like on the bottom of the H, it is going to cut, and you're going to get some falling in that gap.
yeah.
Um, which
So
I found interesting that they also didn't do that.
correct. Yeah. So where anytime you're going to have any two perpendicular satins that are crossing over each other like this top satin is going to really cut into this area, and it's going to pull those stitches from that satin. And like Jeff said, there's a potential where that foam's going to pop through and want to kind of really stick out in this junction. So
I
we're
mean,
going
it's one of those things that we get with like regular embroidery, but it's just amplified with foam.
exactly. Yeah, because you have that foam especially if you have a good dense foam, that foam is going to really want to protrude anywhere that it possibly can where that top thread isn't holding it down. So you really want to bridge those areas, cap properly, and the pathing you really want to kind of travel throughout the letter and only doing a section at a time as you move through. You don't want to bounce around too much. Uh, Not only is it causing trims, but registration when you're dealing with foam, it can throw it off a bit.
So, Justin, I do have a question for you. The individual that gave you this file, did they indicate whether or not they had ran it yet?
They didn't. There was a quick post on the Discord just said, "Hey, does anybody that has experience with 3D, can you take a look at a file that I have?"
Okay.
And yeah, just as soon as opening it, I could see the issues as far as in the digitizing, um, and and I guess I just kind of assumed what the problems would be, just knowing the things that you and I are pointing out here.
Okay.
So right off the bat, I'm gonna go ahead and just select all the. Let's go to select by stitch type, satin, and I'm
So,
gonna.
Justin, actually, here's a really good statement. Since we're here, and we'll go ahead and answer this. Doug says, I can never figure out when to use bridges. So, and then also Barb wants to know a little bit more what we mean by feather a cap. So, if you could go over those two things real quick, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I went ahead and selected all my satins, and I usually use a 0.18 density on my satins.
That was another thing too, is that their end caps were at 0.24, I think,
Yes,
and the satin stitches on the sides were at 0.16.
correct. So it was a little bit heavy on the density of the satins, which 0.16, 0.18. I mean, I guess it wouldn't. Let's see how wide these are. They're about 7 millimeters wide. I think it's overkill from the quality foams that I like using. I think 0.18 is sufficient. Um, it looks like these are branched. That's why it's
Not coming apart.
yeah.
That could be.
Oh, they're just grouped.
Okay.
Okay. Or I just lost my train of thought.
You typically use a 0.18.
0.18. And like you said, the end caps were a different density, which doesn't make much sense because the end caps are there just to simply cut the ends of where the satins are open. So it should be the same density as your top satins. They're just an element that's kind of tucked up underneath the ends of all the satins of the open ends. So
Yeah, so those were at a 0.24. Like I have the file open too. So they're at a 0.24, but I haven't edited them yet. But if you could show feathering and then talk about when to use bridges.
yes, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of go in here and grab all the end caps. And I'm just holding down control as I click the individual elements here. And that will multi-select those. You just got to make sure you don't grab any of the other satins. Okay, so there is a tool in Wilcom where you use a jagged edge tool. I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And what that does is, oh, there we go. I'll just pull it out so you can really see it. what that does is the inner side of the satin stitch, it staggers where those or satin stitches are hitting. What that's going to do is, instead of just uh, not having that and having a solid edge to that where you're going to actually cut the foam, and again causing that kind of loose piece of foam that's underneath this satin is going to want to pop out of these stitches. What that's going to do is go ahead and stagger where those needle penetrations are, so you're not going to completely perforate the foam that's underneath those satins. So, and the one thing they did do is, you know what, I always prefer not using any pull compensation when it comes to 3D puff designs. Uh, for one, that 3D foam is going to already be trying to expand those satins, so they're going to kind of bolden up any satins that are already digitized for 3D puff. And then it also is going to give me a little bit more control of how much more compensation for end caps and whatnot. So I know kind of exact values, and I'm not relying on pull compensation, which is just a percentage or a certain distance that you're gonna comp. But that's just my style.
So Cindy asked, is the jagged edge tool in most of the Wilcom softwares? As far as I'm aware, I think it comes with the base Wilcom package. And I believe it is also in Hatch, but I haven't looked in a while, so that might not be 100% true, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, and as far as other software, I know they may not call it jagged edge.
Yeah, they
They're
call it something else.
yeah,
It's yeah, but I from what I've seen, I think there's only maybe one or two softwares that I haven't seen it in.
right.
But
Typically,
what would you do, Justin, if you don't have that? So let's say you wanted to make a feathered edge, but you don't have that tool. How would you go about doing that?
so you could actually, if you don't have that tool, what you can do is you can just add more points in the satin itself and kind of stagger it yourself. Um, that's probably your best way, is again, so you're not having just that straight line of perforation on that foam underneath that top satin. But the jagged edge tool, and looking at other software, you're probably going to find it in a menu that has to do with some type of decorative stitch or a motif stitch that you're applying to satins. That you can choose either side as far as to apply that. Like right now, this is set on side 2, and
Yeah,
it depends on which side that you're digitizing first, the points or side 1, or you can do both sides. But in these case, you want the flat end that does cut the side that's going to be at the end of your satins, and then the jagged edge to the inside.
I think this is one of those tools that they came up with for a completely different reason than we actually use it for.
Exactly. I use it a lot when I'm doing like kind of animal furs, and there's like satin borders on something. I'll throw
Mm-hmm.
that jagged edge to the outside, so the inside has a nice clean border, but the outside kind of gives that furry look to it. Um, so yeah, I use it on some occasions, but for the most part, I use it mostly on 3D puff stuff.
Yep, same.
So, where I would start, typically I like trying to, again, go through the design and complete sections at a time. So I'm not traveling. I've seen a lot of digitizers where they'll come and cap all the areas in the individual letter and then go back to the beginning and work their way through all the top stitches. I don't think that's a good idea, only because the registration, by the time you go through and you're capping all that, you're traveling on a curved surface of a hat. So by the time you get back to where you're going, especially dealing with the foam that's really want to push and put pressure on that thread, you may not line up your caps to your satins by the time you get back to where you started from. So I prefer kind of traveling through the design, trying to keep the idea of bottom up, center out as much as possible as I travel through, and complete segments like this bottom um, serif here complete that segment and work my way through as I'm traveling throughout that letter to complete that letter.
All right, Justin, we've got a lot of questions today, so I'm going to pull this one up.
Sure.
Don't forget, you're going to go over how and when to decide when to use a bridge.
Yes.
But Cindy also asks, would you ever make the jagged edge even with the edge of the letter? I notice sometimes that the puff likes to peek out between the cap and the edge of the letter.
The cap and the edge of the letter.
Yeah, so like the side of the satin, you know how sometimes when you cut it with the cap and then you've got that satin that comes up the other direction, sometimes it pokes out between those two.
You're referring to, let's move this out so I can compensate for the push. Are you referring to this area here?
Yeah, that little corner. That's what I
understand. That's another thing as far as the caps are concerned as well. As you can see, that they're digitized in a way where they're kind of in a triangular shape. And what the reason for that is if this were square and running right to the inside of that satin stitch, again, because there's so much pressure going on with the foam, there's a good chance where these stitches are going to push out this way once it's sewn, because that foam is pushing so hard on it. So that's why I bring these corners in to make sure that they're, to make sure that those sides aren't pushing out to the sides of the satins. And then as far as the compensation that I do here, because there's going to be a push on the outside or the ends of these satins, I usually do an overhang where these caps are sticking out at least a 0.5 millimeter past that satin. And again, keeping in mind, I don't want to bring that edge of that cap flush with the edge of this satin, because you don't want it pushing outwards, because once it's sewn, it'll kind of look like this. If you do that. So I bring those in just a hair.
Wait. Shameless plug. This is where the 3D Puff Pro tool comes in.
This is true. I do compensate in here where I am, anticipating some push of these caps, and hopefully once you get the push out from top to bottom and the push to the left of this top satin, these two are going to meet and you're not going to have any foam pushing out. But if you do, and you have a tool like the 3D Puff Pro, this is where you can just take the little tip of that tool and just kind of give this a little push, and then that foam will kind of go up underneath those top satins, and stay there once the two satins are now sewn and established. So,
I mean, it's kind of a balancing act, because you either have what Justin illustrated where it sticks out too wide, or you have it too narrow and there's a lot of foam, or you have too far in and it just waterfalls over the edge. So you're trying to get the trifecta of getting it to line up and stop neatly on the edge.
Yeah, and what Jeff is referring to as the waterfall, that if you don't have this compensation here and that satin is flush with that cap, once it sews, this is going to push out way over that cap, and you're going to have actually loose threads, a good 3 or 4 loose threads that are waterfalling over that cap. So it's not everything is staying flush on top of that foam.
Yep.
All right. So as far as pathing, I'm going to go ahead and kind of make the decision that I'm going to start on this bottom leg of the H. I'm going to do this serif, work my way up, work my way back down, across, and then the right side. So I'm going to go ahead and select that serif and move it to the beginning.
All right, Doug. Where the question's going to get answered. I'm ready.
The worst case scenario in a bridge is something that is perfectly perpendicular to each other. So whether the vertical is going after the horizontal, or in this case, the vertical is underneath the horizontal, two things are going to happen. Because again, that foam really wants to push out. It's almost like water in a water balloon. It wants to escape. Having this little gap here, there's a good chance that after it sews this and continues on with the vertical, that foam's going to want to peek out here. Same
Well,
as
actually, I think it's going to be the opposite. That the top satin that you have highlighted is going to fall into the crack
it,
that's made by the satin below it.
right. And yeah, so basically this intersection is not going to be clean because of the way it's going to interact with the foam, and then you have the two perpendicular pieces. So what's the answer? A bridge. So what I usually do is I'll go ahead and digitize a quick little satin. And again, I'm going to do this another color so you can kind of see the contrast. I'm staying away from these edges because I don't want this satin to push out at all when it starts getting pressure on that foam. You want to make sure that there's no underlay on that. And then what density you usually use for the bridges, Jeff?
Me, I'm like 0.7, 0.8.
0.8. That's where I'm at too. So using a high density on that, you're essentially creating a zigzag stitch. So you're not using enough density where you're actually cutting the foam. That's not the purpose here. You're creating a surface where you're basically tacking that foam down to make sure that all the top stitches are going to lay on top of that, and they're not going to seek in. They're not going to allow foam sticking out. Um, and it's just going to give you that kind of that bridge, hence the name, to make sure that your top stitches are going to lay on top of that.
All right, Justin. Doug popped in a question here. He says, how much overlap at that point on the H? And so this was about 30 seconds ago, so I think he's talking about the opposite one where they actually overlapped or underlapped the satin.
On this side.
Yeah.
So with that one, because this satin is stitching first, this one's going to really pull on that and expose an area underneath there, and it's going to allow the foam sticking out. As far as the overlap, I haven't really worked on that side, but
So how much overlap do you have on your little satin that you drew there, the zigzag stitch? How far? How do you know how far in to go versus how far, or if you know what's too narrow, what's too wide? Where do you like to settle on your
so
overlap?
right now it's about 2 millimeters on either side. Um, it really depends on the size of the satin that you're doing as far as your top satin. These are pretty big satins that we're working with, 7 millimeter wide. Um, I tend to, it's got to be enough where you're not adding stitches in here and it's barely doing anything, or you're even causing small stitches in the bridge itself, but you're trying to do these really small stitches on foam. You're going to start getting thread breaks and or needle breaks. So it's the actual stitch length that you're wanting out of the bridge, as well as kind of grabbing a good amount of surface. So the 2 millimeters on each side, I think, is sufficient.
All right, Justin, we're going to keep this masterclass going today with more questions.
Yeah.
Cindy says, I know you're going to talk about pathing. Do you do your caps and bridges first on each letter or on all the letters?
I don't do them all at all, whether it's all the letters or individual letters. I do them in segments. So the bottom serif here needs two caps on the ends. I'm actually going to do those caps, do that bottom satin, and work my way through the design. Um, Again, I think doing piecemeal and trying to do caps throughout a letter and coming back and doing the top satins, 9 times out of 10, by the time you get to the last satin that you're doing in that letter, that cap is going to be a millimeter or two off. So that end isn't going to be as clean as the rest of them. So, all right. So let's go ahead and start with that bridge. I'm going to go ahead and throw it to the beginning. I'm just going to start coloring everything blue that I complete, just so I know
Where you left off.
yeah, where I left off. That's what I do a lot of times when I'm editing designs. As I kind of complete or fix things, I'll change them to a different color, and that way I know where I've done. So the one thing I need to keep in mind, I always preach that the zero mark center is right here. So I don't want to start uh, any tie-in stitches. They're going to be right on that seam. And given that this bridge here is about 5 millimeters wide, I think anywhere that I have lock stitches going on this bridge, you're going to be right on that seam. So it's probably not a good idea to start right there. So I'll actually just go ahead and just grab an area here where I start a running stitch. And that way those lock stitches are out here kind of as far away as possible to the seam. Um, if you really wanted to keep away from the seam, there's some hats that have really thick areas, a good 10 millimeters each way to a seam. You could always just kind of start your running stitch that's way out here, away from the seam, and then just kind of travel your way down here. Let's just go that for the sake of argument and in case there is a big seam on this. Travel stitches, I usually do about 4.5 millimeters wide, or in length. That way you're utilizing the traveling, but you're not adding stitches. You're not adding more, needle penetrations for that pressure foot to be coming down on your foam.
So Justin, I got a question for you on that. Let me select a run stitch. So not only you do that larger stitch length, but let's talk about your variable run length.
Variable run length, especially in larger designs like this. Let me pull that so you can see it again. Larger designs like this, especially with real kind of straight angles that you're going to be traveling through, you don't need variable run length. If you were to try to turn in a tight circle, let's say, the variable run length is going to actually vary the stitch length, even though I have it set at 4.5, in order to keep that circular shape in as close as possible. If you turn that off and you have a longer stitch length, as you can see, it's basically just setting it to the 4.5 millimeters that I have, and it's no longer to keep that shape, because it's not basically stutter stepping around that shape. I don't want to use variable run length just because I don't want it to calculate where, say, turning a corner, it's adding really, really small stitches, which the value is here on your variable run length. So because I'm traveling I know that these are really, really wide satins. I'm not going to have any problems where I'm going to try to make tight curves. I can go ahead and turn that off. So I know that I'm forcing it to say, hey, wherever you travel, let's just throw a 4.5 millimeter wide stitch, and it's going to do that, as much as possible.
So this is a little less prevalent on this design, but when you start getting into some of that more scriptish 3D puff where there's more curves, I like to also turn it off. I'm sure Justin does as well, but you're a little bit more careful with how tight you fall and where your stitches are falling, and it really comes down to chewing up that foam.
Right, exactly. All right, so I went ahead and copied and pasted that bridge, because I'm actually going to drop a vertical one here as well. So I have my starting stitch that's going to drop those tie-in stitches way away from that center seam, assuming this is going to be a 6-panel hat. I'm going to travel down to the edge of this bridge. It's going to end here. I'm going to go ahead and do this bridge, bring it a little away from the bottom here. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and sequence this where what already is. This cap first. And I'm going to actually cut and paste this satin.
So while you're doing that, Justin, if you could explain a little bit as to why you added that second bridge in there.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to show right now. So
Okay.
Again, I am really big on traveling and completing every section that you can as you travel throughout your design. You're not going back and forth over itself, needless travel stitches, expanding too far of an area to come back and try to stitch onto. So what I did was I know that I can't end this horizontal satin at the end here and then come back to travel to the top of this serif. So I need this satin to stop somewhere in the middle here so I can travel back up underneath the vertical leg of this H. So because of that, I know that this serif here is going to be two separate parts. Now, because I am traveling through and it's going to sew this end of the serif first and kind of come back over to this side, and I'm going to travel over to this cap here. I need to set my settings on my tool so I'm not having to change every time. So I'm going to go ahead and resequence. I'm pulling these back here to compensate the push of them. All right. So if I do a slow redraw for you. So as I'm traveling through, I'm going to do the first cap here, lead into the vertical cap that you see. That's going to basically, I'm sorry, not cap, but the bridge, and that's going to basically create a bridge where those two satins are meeting. I do this a lot when it's really wide satins because again, you're only having needle penetrations on either side of that satin, so the middle of that satin is going to have a lot of pressure on it, where the foam's going to want to push up on. So I'm creating that bridge there to make sure that those two satins where they meet, you're not going to have any foam sticking out.
So in normal software, I mean, not normal software, in normal digitizing where those two objects would meet is typically called overlap lines.
Overlap.
So
Right.
typically they would overlap the two lines when they come back and it sews back on itself to help compensate for that push that you're getting there, that bubbling effect that you're going to get with your fabric. But because that's amplified in foam, it's better to put down a bridge.
Exactly.
So Justin, I do have a question. I'll
Yes.
let you finish that thought, and then I'll go ahead and pull up the question.
But for that idea of overlap, if you can kind of see here, the edge of this left side of the satin is, I have it stopping to the right of where the overlap of the right side of the serif is going to be overlapping to the left. So those will overlap on top of having that bridge underneath it.
All right, so let me go ahead. I'm going to bring up a statement first that is, Barb, so you use two bridges, one vertical and one horizontal.
Yes.
And then Cindy says, I had someone ask if you need to digitize for the different types of foam, regular or dense.
I don't digitize any differently.
I don't
you,
either. I think that comes down to edits, like, right? You send the file, and if they're using a really soft foam, they'll usually come back and say, hey, I got an edit for you.
Right. Yeah, there might be some interchange or intersection or a compensation that I use that works on the majority of foam that I know is good out there. If it is a foam that I haven't digitized for before, there might be a little quirk in it that I may need to make an adjustment, like you're saying. Overall, my kind of point of view is if you're using a really soft foam or like a really thin foam, you're not going to get the results that you want if you're looking for a big, bold 3D puff design. So you may want to kind of move towards a foam that's going to get you better results.
I mean, honestly, what I've seen is this is like 95%. The techniques and the compensation that Justin using 95% of the time is going to work. It's going to be that 5% that there's going to be an odd foam or there's going to be a weird, because sometimes it's not even the foam, it's a machine issue because you sometimes have to digitize around the cap driver. But 95% of the time, this is going to be successful.
Right. Exactly. All right. So again, traveling through, knowing that anytime where I know that I'm not going to be able to stop and trim at the end of a satin, I'm going to put bridges in anywhere that they need to meet the two sides are meeting. So again, knowing that I'm starting at the bottom here, I'm going to travel up, do the top serif, and which means that this vertical serif is going to have to stop somewhere in the middle in order to go to the middle horizontal part of the H. So I'm going to go ahead and I just copied and paste. I use copy and paste a lot when it comes to digitizing, especially when I'm, kind of repeating myself in techniques and elements that I'm reusing. So again, this travels from this side, comes across, comes back to here. I have a travel stitch that I'm going to go up to. I'm going to go ahead and resequence it, travel up to this bridge, and that's going to be the secured bridge for the gap or the split that's going to be in this vertical line. I'm going to go ahead, since I'm in this intersection right here, I'm going to add the bridge that's going to be securing the horizontal and vertical lines here. So I resequence those. A lot of people digitize and just kind of go through and change their start and end points at the end. I kind of like doing it as I go through it, just so I don't forget.
So I'm going to bring up a comment here because I think that this is a good one. Mike, welcome. First off, welcome for joining us. It says, I just did my first ever puff patch. It came out good, but I didn't digitize it. I need to learn about checking. Oh, I need to learn about checking in from Chicago. Welcome. We also have, let me get this right when it gets bigger. Sylvester joining us from Ghana. Welcome. And they're talking about the different foams that they're using in the comments here. Oh, hold on. Doug says, how much do you overlap the splits, Justin?
The splits that are going in the same direction.
Yeah, I think so. I believe so.
I would say a millimeter or so, just to make sure that you have a couple of stitches, the stitches themselves that are overlapping. You don't want too much buildup in that area. You're just kind of making sure that the push of those two kind of overlap each other to secure the foam, any type of foam that might be pushing through. So was there another question earlier?
I think I got them all. I will check while you continue on.
Okay. So while Jeff was talking I know that the top serif here is going to work exactly the way the bottom did, where it needs to meet somewhere in the middle. So I just went ahead and grabbed from this bridge all the way through that satin. I grabbed everything and just copied and pasted up here. I mirrored vertically, since the bridge is going to be at the bottom of the serif instead of the top like it is here. I went ahead and started resequencing stuff. I copied and pasted again this vertical, so now I have two pieces of the vertical. Doesn't need this overlap, so I'm going to bring this down a bit. And again, I try to do as much as possible in one area and travel throughout and only meet where I have to. So after these few bridges here, I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom of that. Let me just travel back down to the bottom here. So I'm traveling to this satin here. So I'm working my way through it. I'm doing this bottom satin, travel stitch up to this bridge, then to this bridge, traveling back down to the bottom of the vertical satin. I'm going to go ahead and travel up to where these two are going to meet. I'm actually going to bring that down a little bit since that bridge is here. I want to make sure that I do that overlap kind of in the center of that bridge. Travel stitch up to, again, this section, which is just like the bottom. I want to make sure I'm matching up start and end points of everything. So that's the last part of the top serif there, I can go ahead and resequence this. I'm going to drag that down so I get some overlap there. Okay, so looking at what I've done, since everything's blue that I've done there, you do a quick redraw where review that we went ahead and did the bridges here for the perpendicular intersection, as well as the bridge underneath the two sections that are kind of split and meeting up with each other. Travel to the next section that needed bridges, do those bridges, come back down and do the bottom satin, travel through, do the bridges that are necessary, all the under support bridges and caps first on that small little section, and the end point of that's wrong, but it should go to my edit here. Yeah, I just had the start point at the bottom, so I'll go ahead and reverse that. And now that puts me in a position where I can travel through this H and continue on and do that to the right side of the H. So I eliminated probably 3 trims already, and I've only done the left side of the H. And I've already established the bridge and the under support of this intersection. So I want to make sure that, you know, this side's going to be bridged. So from where I'm at, I'll go ahead and travel again using my longer running stitch. Go ahead and copy and paste. So I have that bridge here. I'll go ahead and travel back over to this side since I'm going to be traveling from left to right on that horizontal. Select those and resequence. So again, traveling from where I was at there, the bottom of that satin, travel over to the bridge. I'm going to change the start and end of that bridge. Travel back over to the end of this horizontal. Again, changing the start and stop. Color that blue so I know where I've done. So yeah, you're basically repeating this side of the H. The only difference is because you're not worried about having to stop in the center of this vertical line, you know that you can travel basically from the bottom of the H and end at the top here. So the main difference is you're going to have this vertical. You're going to travel upwards using that vertical satin, and it's going to be underneath this serif, and that serif doesn't need to be split as well, since it could be ending at one of the ends of that serif and not worry about any splits in that as well. So I know we're getting here down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I'm not interjecting as much, so you can speed.
So the main difference here is I'm going to go ahead and travel over, again, utilizing, since I know I'm going to have to do the same thing, I'm going to utilize cut and paste. Grab this, this, and this. I'm going to resequence here. Grab the green down there. And this is where it differs. Since this is ending here, I could resequence that vertical next. I'm not worried about any bridges down the center of this vertical because it's not going to be split. All it is it's utilizing that satin stitch. It's going to be traveling as well as, you know, being the main top stitches in this segment, but it's going to travel up to this serif here. And I'm going to go ahead and the majority of this I'm going to use as well and copy over, but I'm not going to need to do as many bridges because I'm not going to split. Go ahead and delete those. And what I could do is I know I'm not going to be splitting this satin, the top serif, so I could delete that one. I'm going to go ahead and grab one of the sides and just make it go all the way to the end. So it's the same overall shape as the two pieces. I'm going to delete the side I don't need. Oh, one thing I did forget here. I am going to need to go ahead and travel from the bottom and get this bridge done. And then I'll travel back down.
All right, Justin, I'm going to speed grab this question too.
Yeah,
It's from Doug. Do you use any center run underlay for this?
I don't use any underlay with my 3D puff.
No, it's all any underlay that he's using is going to be manually digitized run stitches.
Exactly. Those are the only underlay needed is going to be done using the travel stitches basically throughout. So I don't again using the whole idea of using the minimum amount of stitches to get the what you need done for the 3D puff is what I'm focusing on.
So I think this is a really good example on the H here because we are coming down to the last 8 minutes of the live. So I think what would be beneficial, Justin, as you finish this up here, is let's kind of move over and look at the W, and you can talk about where, because that is such a different letter.
Right.
Um, there's going to be different choices on where you would use your bridges, and so let's talk a little bit about the W there and how you would utilize your bridges in that letter.
Yeah. So in this section, because you do have two verticals and a horizontal bottom or a capped bottom, you have basically three individual pieces of satins that are intersecting right in this area. So I would actually do a bridge um, in this area here, and that's just going to make sure that all three of those where they intersect, they are going to have that foundation that you need with the bridge, um, and then also coming down, these kind of meet pretty much right at the edge of each other. I'd go ahead and do an overlap where those three meet. So there is a little bit of an overlap. Um,
So do you worry about at all those two satins that come and they
right here,
yep, where they meet there in the middle?
I haven't had any problems with that because these two kind of where those points come in, they're going to cut the foam pretty cleanly here. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Not worried about it. Um,
But the extension past that, you don't worry about anything falling in there.
no, I mean typically not. If I do, for whatever reason, if those stitches are hitting each other at a certain angle that you're having some type of anomaly, I'll go ahead and add a few support stitches or something like that.
All right. And then Barb is asking about the corner of the upper right of the F. Yep, to get a crisp corner. So if you could hit that real quick too. And I think that's the last thing that we need to really cover here, and we can go ahead and close out. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, these corners, especially 90-degree corners or sharp corners, foam does have a tendency that they want to stick out at these areas. So when I'm actually traveling, like if I'm coming up and it's going to be the last thing I'm sewing, after I sew this vertical, I'll actually when I'm traveling from cap to cap, so say like I did this cap, I'll actually come in here and throw some kind of corner support where it kind of again it's not nothing too dense. You want to make sure that your stitch lengths aren't going to be too tight in here, but it basically lays a foundation to keep that foam in place. So it's again it doesn't want to expand out and push out on these corners here. But that's typically what you can do to combat that.
So you don't typically have a problem where the stitch is there trying to split the corner after it cuts it.
Not typically. Again, the foam's going to make a difference. Um, a nice dense quality foam. I don't see as many problems as other foams that I've used. The foundational stitches are kind of where you control the foam more than the top stitches where they're just there to cut it. So
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, I think this is a good stopping point. Obviously, Justin's going to go through this a little bit further and fix it up for the Digitizing 911. Let me go ahead and remove this from scene. And Justin's going to be really big for a second, but that's okay. He deserves it. This was a lot of information packed into this live. There was a lot of information packed into this one. So for you guys that do want to explore Puff even more, Justin is going to be teaching a 3D Puff class on at the Impressions Expo here coming up in
Yes.
Long Beach. I believe it's on Saturday.
The class is the Saturday of the show. Yes, I think it's 10:45 if I don't mistake. I will be posting some links to the classes since they are up now. But yeah, if this type of stuff interests you and you want to learn more about it and you are going to be in Long Beach, you're going to get 3 hours of this. So
It might go a little bit more in depth.
yes, it'll definitely go in more in depth, some techniques and some real life examples of hats and stuff that I've done, and some new projects that I hope to accomplish before the show. But I will finish up this file. I'll send it to the person that sent it. His name is Jeff, actually, as well, and
Yeah,
ask
he actually
him.
dropped in a little bit earlier.
Okay. And ask him if there's. I'm not sure if he's in the Facebook group, but if not, at least in the Discord, if he can maybe show us his end results. Let us know if that is the issues he was having are resolved with the new file. But I'll get that over to him either later tonight or tomorrow, and we can hopefully follow up.
Awesome. Well, I guess everybody with that, we know where Justin's going to be next. I'm also going to be in Long Beach. So please stop by, see us, bother us, and we're excited for the show. And I think that's all we've got planned. Next week is Thanksgiving.
Yes, we are off next week because of the holiday week. So we know people are going to be running around hustling, bustling before Turkey Day. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody, if we don't talk to you before then.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works. We have Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios. We are both here representing the Embroidery Nerd. We'd like to thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time.
Good night, everybody.